Alright guys, let's talk about accuracy. Now most people are immediately just going to open up the weapon builder and start looking at the figures, looking at the Tarkov stats, but as usual these are not accurate. For example, this rifle in particular is zeroed for BCP FMJ, which has absolutely no benefits or drawbacks when it comes to accuracy. However, if we go over to the T5000M and compare it, well this is 0.79, this is 0.73. It's a little bit better, right? But not significantly. Well, it actually is kind of significant because this thing's zeroed for M80, which means that a round with an accuracy debuff is currently giving us that stat. And if we compared them directly, it would look differently. So in order to compare guns, as usual, we need to go to a third-party website. But before we can do that, we actually have to understand what affects accuracy on a weapon. If we remove the barrel, we will see that the accuracy is a weird figure that isn't really relevant to anything because you can't fire the gun in this configuration. But when we add the barrel and we look at the barrel stats, we can see that it basically sets the MOA at 0.65. We do not need to worry about this because this will happen in the ballistics calculator, but there are some situations where barrels will have accuracy multipliers on them, which is weird, and you will need to keep an eye out for that when you are doing this. Second thing to look at is the muzzle device. When you are shooting 308, your best muzzle device is usually going to be the 51T, same goes for 5.56, unless the SCAR, like the SCAR heavy device is available, in which case you should use that. The 51T has an accuracy modifier of plus 3%, so we need to remember that number because we're going to have to plug that in on the website in order to compare this gun against other guns accurately. In order to do this, let's go to 308 and let's grab the T5000M, let's grab the correct barrel, and let's add the accuracy modifier of 3. And then let's change it from M80 to a round that has absolutely no accuracy modifier, which you can see on the wiki, BCP FMJ. And then let's look, and we have 0.63 Tarkov MOA, which is different than what we had in game, and is in fact better, because if we go to M80, we're at 0.72. So in order to compare apples to apples, you need to go through this system instead of using the weapon builder. Another thing that is inaccurate is this is not the true MOA, this is the Tarkov MOA. Tarkov used a radius instead of a circumference, and consequently every gun is half as accurate as it actually should be, which is exceptionally annoying for snipers, but they're not going to fix that bug anytime soon. So in reality, we are dealing with a rifle that has 1.43 MOA. Now coming back over here, when you are doing this, please be careful because there are some things that affect accuracy that you might not imagine would, such as the chassis. The AICS M700 chassis is easily the best one, and as you can see, it gives a plus 6 accuracy increase. Not too many people know that with the long barrel, the correct long barrel, and that chassis, we can get a Remington down below 0.5 MOA. Most people think of this as an inaccurate bolt action, but it's actually one of the two most accurate 308 in its proper configuration. Now all of you poor souls in the future are going to have to calculate this yourselves, but for those of you lucky enough to be watching when this comes out, have yourselves a look at this. I did all of the hard work for you. This is every caliber, the guns that are most likely to be used in that caliber, whether or not they are loud or suppressed is indicated by -L or -S, and then if they have accuracy modifiers, they are put on the name here, like plus 6 for the SV98L, which has a muzzle device which has a plus 6 accuracy modifier. There is one error. The M700S, I did all the calculations for plus 9. It's actually plus 10 because you could put the SCAR muzzle device on there, and I messed that up. So this should be ever so slightly more accurate, but besides that, this is a pretty good resource. I'm going to delete this because you guys weren't supposed to see that. That's from a failed attempt at recording this video. Moving on, after the round, which is color-coded the exact same way as this one with some differences, we have the accuracy modifier. Once again, this can be seen on the wiki, and then the Tarkov MOA with that specific round, as well as the real MOA, which is double that. Now for the color coding, red obviously means it is found in raid only, just like the previous videos. Green means you can purchase it or obtain it in some way, whether it's crafts, purchase, barters, etc. But I added these purple rounds, which are kind of a series of rounds that are common in Tarkov, which is that the really low pen rounds in a caliber tend to have pretty extreme accuracy modifiers, and oftentimes really good ballistic coefficients and actual ballistic characteristics. So I added those rounds in here even though they weren't included in my pen charts because none of them have above 40 pen. Those are in purple. One quick side note for 7.62 by 54, PS rounds share the same 10% accuracy modifier as those rounds do, so I just put PS rounds in instead because nobody really cares how FMJ performs. Well, with this chart, which pretty much includes all of the relevant stuff as well as an RSAS, so you have at least one comparison for the most accurate semi-automatic when compared to the bolt guns, you could probably see most of your main options that you would be considering and compare them directly to each other, apples to apples. But there is one more thing I want to talk about, which is A1 and A2. Just like V1 and V2 in the last video, these things are specific ranges at which a certain accuracy threshold is met, something that I can visualize and directly compare guns to each other with that actually has a real-world application. This isn't just what is MOA, it's a number of things at 100 yards. I know what A1 is and I know what A2 is, and I'm going to explain them to you now. And for that, of course, we need our handy bear in paint here. Let's assume that the Tarkov head is 19 centimeters tall until somebody proves otherwise. And let's assume that it is 16.5 centimeters wide based off of some quick Google searching. A1 is the point in which your grouping size goes essentially from, we don't want that, goes from ear to ear, meaning there is a 100% chance with correct aim that you will hit this shot. It will never deviate outside of the head hitbox as long as your aim is correct. And it has a little bit of margin for error too in terms of verticality. This is the point in which it is all skill, no luck, essentially. Now once we get to A2, that is when your grouping is 19 centimeters tall and could potentially go off of either side and miss the head hitbox over the ears. At this point, even with perfect aim, there is an RNG chance that you will miss, and you might even attribute that to something other than the MOA. You might think you went over or you might think you went under, and that can be a little bit frustrating. But it's still a good point to mark because it's still highly probable that you are going to hit your headshot. It's still a reasonable accuracy metric. And also it marks the point at which any larger you're starting to miss in multiple directions. You're not just possibly going off the right or left while still growing into the head hitbox vertically. You're now growing out of the head hitbox, and shots that miss are going to start, either hitting the upper thorax and not killing or going over the head as well. So it is a point of diminishing returns as well. So remember, A1 means as long as you are correctly aiming, you are always going to hit. And then A2 means as long as you are correctly aiming, you are overwhelmingly likely to hit, but it's about to start getting significantly worse as we go past this range. With that information, we can go back and we can make sense of this, and we can start to see practical applications of this. If I am using an AXMC, and I am using either AP or FMJ, which both have a 0% accuracy modifier, my Tarkov MOA is going to be 0.37, which is excellent, which translates to a real MOA of 0.74, which is still quite good. Not like top end bolt action, but definitely solid. And we are going to see that at 758 meters, we are still guaranteed to hit our head as long as we have perfect aim. And at that far of a range, it's actually pretty damn difficult to have a perfect holdover in terms of verticality. So this is overachieving. And at 873, we are still overwhelmingly likely to hit our shot. But of course, there is a slight potential it goes over the ear, and anything past here, we're going to start really adding to our area of our circle where we are not even hitting. Now the numbers are all here. I can scroll down so you can see the RSAS, you can pause it where you need, and you can do all of the analyzing yourself, but I'm going to simplify this for you pretty dramatically in terms of tiers of accuracy. For tier 1, we pretty much have the AK-50 and the 338. These are the most accurate in the game, pretty much. The AK-50 at the moment cannot be suppressed. The 338 can, making the 338 the most accurate suppressible gun in the game. Tier 2 is just below here, and we are going to add in loud 308 guns, such as the DVL-10 loud and the M700 loud with the appropriate 26-inch barrel and the AICS chassis, as I showed you. And we are going to include 54 rimmed, both loud and suppressed. Loud is better with 54 rimmed because you can get that muzzle device with a small accuracy bonus of +6, but suppressed is still pretty damn good. With your good ammos, you are looking at, if we're not min-maxing accuracy with PS, if you're using BS or SNB, we're still looking at 510 for A1, which is pretty decent. It's not quite as good as like 597 out of the loud 308, but we're ballpark. These are the tier 2 rifles. Tier 3, unfortunately, is going to be 308 suppressed. And I say unfortunately because I'm a big fan of 308 ammo as opposed to 54 rimmed and as opposed to 338. But suppressed 308 guns really fall into this third tier of accuracy, starting with the T5000M, which is only pulling 419 with M80A1, which is your most likely round. If you splurge and you buy M61s and you suffer the ballistic coefficient loss, you can get that up to 468. So we're starting to get pretty close to like the suppressed SV98. We're not too far off, but for the most part, suppressed 308 guns come in at tier 3. And all of this comes together to leave us in our current situation that we have as snipers. We basically need to pick 2 out of 3. We can have a suppressed gun with very good handwriting. We can have extremely good ammo that's capable out to all ranges, and we can have extreme accuracy. We just can't really have all 3. If you want suppressed accuracy, then you are going to need to go with the AXMC. If you want suppressed with extremely good ammo, you're going to need to go with the T5000. Or if you want accuracy and ammo, you're going to have to go with a loud DVL or a Remington 700 with the 26-inch barrels. And then the problem is the only real way to get all 3 of these is found in raid ammo. And then it once again comes down to the AXMC. And that's kind of the current situation of 1.0. But obviously that is going to change as things go forward, and that's why I gave you the tools to find this stuff out yourself, not just a video telling you what's best.